I'm Emily. When this story began, I had just stepped into adulthood, fresh out of college, landing my first real job in marketing, and finally moving into my own apartment. It wasn't much, a modest one-bedroom with unreliable water pressure and a radiator that had a mind of its own, but it was mine. That meant something. My family? Traditional would be the polite way to put it. There was my older brother Adam, 29, married to Vanessa, and they had 2 kids. My parents still lived in the same house I grew up in, and like clockwork, every Saturday, we all gathered there for dinner. It always played out the same way. Adam just closed another big deal, my dad would announce proudly, while serving himself another helping of mashed potatoes. Third one this quarter, my mom would add, glowing with pride. That's our boy. Always knew he had it in him. Then without fail, she'd turn to Vanessa, beaming. Vanessa, darling, that dress is stunning. You always know exactly what to wear. I'd sit there, quietly moving food around my plate while Vanessa threw me her signature look, the kind that made me feel like I'd shown up in sweatpants to a black tie event. She had a way of making me feel small without saying a word, just the slightest arch of her brow, the casual flick of her eyes down to my shoes. These dinners were more like rehearsed performances than actual family gatherings. My dad would brag about Adam's latest career milestone. My mom would swoon over Vanessa's latest charity project. The kids would make a racket that nobody seemed to mind. And me? I might as well have been a decorative piece on the dining room table. Then, one evening, everything changed. The roast was finished. The kids were unusually calm. The usual chorus of Adam's praises had just quieted down when my parents exchanged a look, the kind that sent a chill down my spine. We have something important to tell you, my dad said, clearing his throat. Mom nodded, smoothing her napkin in her lap the way she always did when she was trying to sound reasonable. We've finally finalized our will. I didn't think much of it at first. Estate planning was a thing responsible adults did, right? But then Dad continued, we've decided to leave everything to Adam. I felt my fork freeze in midair. Adam stopped mid-sip of his drink. Vanessa sat up straighter. The house, Dad continued. The cabin at the lake, all our savings, everything will go to him. Silence stretched across the table. I tried to process what I'd just heard. Everything? Mom clasped her hands together. We've put a lot of thought into this, she said, her tone shifting to that practiced, matter-of-fact voice she used whenever she expected me to be the reasonable one. Adam has 2 children to think about. He needs stability, a foundation for their future. It took me a second to find my voice. And what about my future? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. I'll have a family too. I'll have kids one day. Mom's expression tightened. A flicker of annoyance flashed in her eyes before she smoothed it over. Emily, this decision is final. Your father and I won't be changing the will. And just like that, it hit me. Like a flood of memories I'd never wanted to acknowledge. I was 8 years old again, standing on stage at my piano recital, staring at the 2 empty seats where my parents should have been. They were at Adam's soccer game instead. I was 12, waving my straight-A report card in the air, only for them to gush about Adam's B+ in chemistry, because he worked so hard for it. I was 15, crying in my room after my first heartbreak, while Mom was downstairs helping Adam pick out a corsage for his girlfriend. 16, winning the school writing competition. But nobody came to the ceremony because Adam was graduating that day. 18, giving my valedictorian speech to a half-filled auditorium. My parents arriving late and leaving early because Adam needed help moving into his new apartment. All those moments stacked together, forming a picture I'd refused to see until now. I swallowed hard and looked my mother directly in the eyes. You've always loved him more than me, I said. A sharp silence fell over the table. Even the kids had stopped playing with their dessert. Mom's face paled. Emily, that's ridiculous. We love both of our children equally. Then name one time, I said, my voice eerily calm. One time you chose me over him. The silence stretched unbearably long. I saw them struggle for an answer, saw them grasping at empty air. There wasn't one. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I'm done. Mom's forehead creased. Emily, don't be dramatic. No, I cut in. I'm done pretending. I'm done sitting here playing along like I'm part of this family when I'm just an afterthought. Dad's face darkened. You're being selfish. And you're being blind, I shot back. This isn't about money. It's about respect. And I'm finally realizing I'll never get that from you. Adam stayed silent, staring down at his plate. But Vanessa? She couldn't help herself. You're being ridiculous, she scoffed. You always make everything about yourself. Maybe if you weren't so moody all the time. Something inside me snapped. I turned to her, feeling a strange sense of calm. Stay out of this, Vanessa. You're not even family. You just married in and decided that gave you the right to judge me. Her face crumpled, and right on cue, the waterworks started. Dramatic, exaggerated sobs as she buried her face in her hands. Mom shot to her feet, fury written all over her face. How dare you speak to Vanessa that way? She's been nothing but kind to you. Dad's face went red, the same shade I remembered from childhood punishments. Get out, he growled. Get out of this house right now. Gladly. I turned and walked out without looking back, the sound of the door slamming shut behind me feeling like the final punctuation mark on a very long sentence. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the last time I saw them for years. Walking out of my parents' house that night felt surreal. I was angry. More than angry. I was exhausted, emotionally drained in a way that no amount of deep breaths could fix. But underneath the pain, there was something else. Relief. I wasn't going to waste another second trying to prove my worth to people who had already made up their minds. I got in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, heart pounding. It wasn't until I was halfway home that I realized I was crying. Not sobbing, not breaking down, just silent tears rolling down my face, as if my body was finally letting go of something I'd been holding in for years. When I got home, I locked the door behind me and just stood there in the dark for a long time. My apartment wasn't big, wasn't fancy, but for the first time, it truly felt like mine. No expectations, no forced conversations, no silent competition, just peace. I didn't go back. Not the next Saturday, not the one after that. At first, my mom sent messages, short, clipped texts about how I was overreacting and that I needed to come to my senses. My dad, true to form, didn't say much, just the occasional, Emily, this isn't how family works. Adam didn't reach out at all. I didn't expect him to. Life moved forward. I threw myself into my work. Marketing had always been something I enjoyed, something I was actually good at. Unlike my family, my job didn't measure my worth against Adam's. My boss didn't dismiss my hard work because someone else had tried harder. It was refreshing. Outside of work, I started making real friends, the kind who didn't compare me to someone else every 5 minutes. I got closer to my coworker, Hannah, who had a wicked sense of humor and a talent for finding the best happy hour deals. I picked up running, something I'd always wanted to try but never had the time for. And then there was James. I met him in the least glamorous way possible. He took my oat milk latte at a coffee shop by mistake. I was running on 3 hours of sleep and too much caffeine when I stormed up to him. Hey, I think you took my drink. He looked at the cup, then at me, then back at the cup. Oh, this is awkward. I expected an excuse. Instead, he grinned and handed it back. Want a trade? Mine's a caramel macchiato. I was trying to be adventurous, but I immediately regret it. I took a sip. It was way too sweet. Yeah, no, keep it. He laughed, and somehow we ended up sitting down together, talking for almost 2 hours. He was different. He actually listened when I talked. That was new. James, and I fell into an easy rhythm. Dates turned into weekends spent together, which turned into us. A year in, we moved in together. A year after that, he proposed. We kept the wedding small. Just close friends, a handful of extended family members who had stuck by me, and James's side of the family who treated me like one of their own from the start. I didn't invite my parents. I didn't invite Adam. Some relatives tried to change my mind. You'll regret it, they said. It's your wedding day. Family is family. But I knew I wouldn't regret it. And I was right. I walked down the aisle, and every single person there genuinely wanted to be part of my life. No fake smiles, no forced approval, just love. James's mom helped me pick out my dress. His sister was my maid of honor. His dad cried more than I did during the vows. It felt like the family I should have had all along. A year into our marriage, we found out we were expecting twins. A boy and a girl. Pregnancy wasn't easy for me, but James was there through it all. Midnight cravings, hormone-fueled breakdowns over baby name choices, panicked Google searches about every weird symptom. And when the twins were born, he was there. Every single moment. Not just for the big milestones, but the small ones, too. Midnight feedings, rocking them to sleep, whispering to them when he thought I wasn't listening. "You're so loved. You're so wanted." That was when I really understood. I would never let my kids feel the way I had growing up. They would never wonder if they were second place. They would never have to fight for my attention. They would always know they were enough. For a long time, things were quiet, peaceful. I still kept in touch with a few relatives, the ones who respected my boundaries. Aunt Deb would visit for brunch. Uncle Mike sent Christmas cards. But I never asked about my parents, and they never reached out. Until one random Tuesday. I had just put the twins down for a nap when the doorbell rang. I figured it was a package. Maybe groceries. It wasn't. It was them. My parents. Standing on my doorstep like no time had passed. Mom, S voice wavered. "Emily, we've missed you so much." I gripped the doorframe. My heart pounded in my ears. I already knew how they found me, probably through cousin Rachel, who had been dropping hints about family healing during her last visit. Dad cleared his throat. "We want to see our grandchildren. We've waited long enough." I stared at them, searching their faces. 7 years. 7 years. And they just showed up expecting to walk back into my life like nothing had happened? But something felt off. "Why now?" I asked, arms crossing over my chest. "Why after all this time?" They hesitated. Mom opened her mouth, closed it. Dad shifted his weight. Finally, he spoke. "Something happened." I didn't move. "What?" Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Vanessa was unfaithful to Adam. For years. He found out. He had the kids tested." She swallowed hard. "Neither of them are his." The world tilted sideways for a second. Dad's voice was sharp. "We had them tested too. Adam's infertile. He can't have children of his own." I blinked, trying to process. The golden son, the perfect heir, the one they built their legacy around. He would never have biological children. Mom wiped at her eyes. "Those kids, they're not our grandchildren, but your twins, Emily. They're our real family. They're all we have now." A sick feeling churned in my stomach. For 10 years they had doted on Adam's children, treated them as precious, plastered their pictures all over social media. And now? Just erased them? Do you even hear yourselves? My voice was cold. "Those kids love you. They called you Grandma and Grandpa, and now you're just throwing them away because of a DNA test?" "They're not family," Mom said simply. "But your twins." I took a step back, away from them. "Get out," I said. Mom's eyes widened. "Emily, get out!" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My voice was steady, firm. Dad's face hardened. "You can't do this to us." I met his eyes. "Watch me." And I shut the door in their faces. I stood there for a long time after I closed the door. Hands shaking. Heart pounding. My parents were gone, but the weight of their words stayed. "They're not family. But your twins. Like love was something they could turn on and off. Like loyalty only mattered when it was convenient for them." I took a deep breath and forced myself to move. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and tried to steady the storm raging inside me. I had thought maybe after all these years, they would have changed. That time would have softened them. But no, they weren't here because they missed me. They weren't here because they regretted how they treated me. They were here because their perfect son had failed them. And now, I was their backup plan. No. That door had closed a long time ago. I wasn't opening it now. A pattern. I refused to repeat. James got home a few hours later, and I told him everything. He listened quietly, his jaw tightening the more I talked. When I finished, he didn't say, "Maybe you should hear them out," or "They're still your parents." He just took my hand and said, "You did the right thing." And that was that. I wanted to believe it was over, that they'd heard the message loud and clear, that they'd stay away. But I should have known better. It started small, a package on the porch, kids' clothes, expensive toys, books, no note, no explanation. I didn't bring them inside. I took them straight to a donation center. Then another package. And another. Every time, I did the same thing, tossed it into my trunk and drove it away. I thought they'd give up when they got no response. Instead, they escalated. I spotted Mom's car across the street from the twins' kindergarten one morning. 2 days later, I saw Dad at the park, pretending to read a newspaper while the kids played on the swings. They never approached us. Never said a word. They just watched. Like they were waiting for something. Enough was enough. One night, after putting the twins to bed, I sat down with my laptop and typed an email. Subject: "This needs to stop, Mom and Dad. Your behavior has become harassment. The gifts, the stalking near the kindergarten, watching us from a distance. It needs to stop. I have made my position clear. If you continue showing up uninvited around my family, I will have no choice but to involve the police. This is your only warning." Emily stared at the screen for a long time before hitting send. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up. Not with an email. With texts. From Mom. "How could you do this to us? We're your parents. Don't you understand? We might not have much time left. All we want is to know our grandchildren before it's too late." I blocked her number. Then came Dad's texts. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. We're not criminals. We're family. Think about what you're doing to us in our final years." I was about to block him too when one last message came through. A long one. "We've been thinking, Emily. If you let us see the children, we'll change our will. Everything will go to you. The house, the lake cottage, all of it. You were right before. We'll make it right. Just let us be grandparents to your children." I stared at the screen, stomach twisting. They still didn't get it. After everything, they still thought they could buy their way back into my life. And Adam, my brother, the one they had built their world around, they were ready to erase him too. Because he wasn't useful to them anymore. Because he wasn't their perfect son anymore. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I had already made my choice. That night, James and I sat at the kitchen table, 2 untouched cups of tea between us. "It's not just about the will," I said, running my finger along the rim of my mug. "If we let them in now, if we accept this, they'll never stop." James nodded. "Today it's let us see the kids and you get the inheritance. Tomorrow it'll be raise them our way or lose everything." I exhaled, the weight of it all settling deep in my bones. I didn't want their money. I didn't want their approval. I just wanted peace. We made the decision together. I blocked their numbers. Blocked their emails. Removed them from every social media platform. At first, they tried to find ways around it. Letters showed up in the mailbox. Once, Mom even tried reaching me through my work email. But eventually, like a storm running out of rain, their attempts slowed. Then stopped. And for the first time in my life, I was free. The twins started school. James got a promotion. I took on freelance work from home. We were happy. Truly happy. The past wasn't something I thought about often anymore. It was just a chapter in my story that I had left behind. Until one random Tuesday morning. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost let it go to voicemail. But something made me pick up. "Emily?" The voice on the other end was hesitant, familiar yet different. "Adam," a pause. "Can we meet? Maybe grab a coffee?" I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to my brother in years. But something in his voice told me this wasn't just a casual catch-up. "Yeah," I said finally. "Okay." We met at a small cafe downtown. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. The perfectly polished brother I remembered was gone. He looked tired. Older. Real. We sat in silence for a long time, both nursing cups of coffee like shields. Then, finally, he spoke. "I'm sorry," he said. The words tumbled out in a rush. "For everything. For how they always favored me. For not standing up for you. For not seeing it sooner." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "I'm not talking to them anymore either," he admitted, staring into his cup. "Not after they tried to rewrite the will. Not after I realized how fast they were willing to throw me away." I studied him. "What happened?" He exhaled. "I went to the house one last time. You know the framed pictures Mom used to have? The ones of the kids?" I nodded. "They're gone," he said. "Not just taken down. Burned." A chill ran through me. "She told me," he continued, voice barely above a whisper, "that it was easier that way, that it was like those 10 years never happened. 10 years of birthdays, holidays, first steps, first words. Gone. Like they never mattered. Like I never mattered." I looked at him then, really looked at him. For the first time in our lives, Adam finally understood what it felt like to be second choice. And for the first time, I saw something real in my brother. Maybe we weren't so different after all. Adam sat across from me, hands wrapped around his coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping him steady. "They burned them, Emily," he said again, voice hollow. "All the pictures, every single one." I believed him. I had seen the way our parents operated, how they rewrote reality when it no longer suited them. But hearing it out loud, seeing the raw pain in my brother's face, still sent a chill through me. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "So, what now?" He let out a humorless laugh. "I don't know. I guess I just needed to talk to someone who understands." That was the thing, wasn't it? For the first time, he did understand. I thought about the brother I grew up with, the golden boy who never had to fight for love, who got handed everything while I faded into the background. The brother who never stood up for me because he never had to. Now, he was the one discarded. The one erased. The one waking up to the same ugly truth I had learned years ago. I could have told him it was karma, that he had it coming, that he deserved to know what it felt like. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I didn't want him to feel that pain. Not even after everything. So instead I sighed and leaned back in my chair. "They'll never change, Adam. I know." It sounded like he really did. For a while, we just sat there, watching people come and go through the cafe doors. Then he asked, "Do you ever think about forgiving them?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted to be sure I said it right. "Forgiveness to me means making peace with what happened," I said finally. "It means I don't let it eat at me anymore, and I don't. I've moved on." Adam nodded slowly. "But letting them back in?" I shook my head. "No, they made their choice, and I made mine." He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Yeah, I get that." I wasn't sure if he did. Not fully, not yet. But maybe someday he would. We finished our coffee and walked out together. It wasn't like in the movies, where broken siblings suddenly become best friends again after one heart-to-heart. There was too much history between us for that. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance, a small, unspoken understanding that we were both done with the past. That we were both starting over. Without them. After that, my parents stopped trying. No more packages. No more watching from a distance. No more attempts to buy their way into my life. It was like they had finally accepted that I wasn't coming back. Or maybe they just found a new way to rewrite the story, one where I never existed at all. I didn't look them up, didn't ask relatives for updates. I didn't need to. I knew who they were, and I knew they would never change. Life moved forward the way it always does. The twins were growing up fast. Their laughter filled every corner of our home. James and I built the kind of life I had always wanted, one where love wasn't conditional, where no one had to fight for a seat at the table. where family didn't mean the people you were born to, but the people who chose you. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about my parents, about the empty house they lived in, the silence they created for themselves. I wondered if they regretted anything. If they ever thought about picking up the phone. But even if they did, it wouldn't change a thing. Because I wasn't waiting for them anymore. I wasn't looking back. I was home. And that was enough. Story 2. Life was pretty straightforward for me. Fitness, health, and now, apparently, a whole lot of drama. At 26, I was juggling my job as a fitness trainer with my growing health blog. That's how I met Mark at the sports center. The connection was instant, electric, and before we knew it, we were swept up in a whirlwind romance. Then came the day I met his family. It was a sweltering summer afternoon, and I was nervous but excited. I opted for a simple knee-length dress with short sleeves, nothing flashy, just comfortable. Mark had prepped me about his family being a bit traditional, a bit protective. He'd mentioned his mom, Linda, with a tone I couldn't quite decipher at the time. "She's got strong opinions, but don't take it to heart," he'd said. Little did I know those were words of warning. We stepped into their family home, and there they were. Alex, Mark's younger brother, greeted us first, all hearty smiles and welcoming vibes. Then came Linda. The air seemed to crackle with disapproval as her eyes swept over me, lingering on my bare arms. "Is this how you dress to meet your future mother-in-law?" she said, her voice colder than I expected. "A bit bold, don't you think?" I was taken aback, my mind scrambling for a response. Mark squeezed my hand in silent support. "Well, it's summer," I managed, "and it's incredibly hot. I thought this was decent," Linda scoffed. "Comfortable or not, it's about first impressions. I would have expected something more appropriate." Mark jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Mom, come on, it's really hot. Erica's dressed fine. Let's not start off on the wrong foot." But Linda wasn't having it. "I'm just saying, Mark, it's about respect." Dinner was a tense affair. Conversations flowed around me, but Linda's earlier comments hung in the air like a bad smell. Thankfully, Alex cracked jokes and shared stories, trying to lighten the mood. Mark kept shooting me reassuring glances, but the damage was done. Later, while I was helping with the dishes, Linda cornered me in the kitchen. "Listen, dear," she said, "I'm just looking out for my son. He's a good boy, and I don't want him to make a mistake." I was floored. "A mistake, Linda? I love Mark, and I'm not here to play games. I don't know what I did to give you a bad impression, but that's not me." She just shook her head. "We'll see. Time tells all truths." The ride home was quiet. Mark apologized for his mom's behavior, but I could tell he was upset too. "She can be protective," he said, "but this was too much. I'm sorry, Erica." I sighed, leaning back in the seat. "It's okay, Mark. But if this is how it's going to be, we've got a rocky road ahead." Wedding planning was in full swing, and Mark and I were diving headfirst into all of it. Cake tasting, venue hunting, and of course the dress. I found a stunning gown, sleek and maybe a tad revealing, but nothing outrageous. At least, I didn't think so until Linda saw it. "You plan on wearing that in front of the whole family, Erica?" she blurted out, her eyes wide with disapproval. "Looks like you're aiming for a beach party, not a wedding." I tried to laugh it off. "It's just modern, Linda. Plus, it's going to be a warm day and I want to be comfortable." Mark squeezed my hand, silently pleading with me not to engage. But Linda's frown spoke volumes. She wasn't pleased, muttering about tradition and decency as she walked away. I thought, if a dress could cause this much commotion, what else was in store for us? After the initial clash with Linda, things settled into an uneasy truce. I buried myself in work and my blog, my little slice of sanity. It was my space, where I felt in control, sharing my passion for fitness and health. It never occurred to me that this very passion would become the next battleground. One evening, Mark and I were relaxing on the couch. He was scrolling through his phone, a frown slowly creeping onto his face. "Babe, we need to talk," he said, his voice serious. I sat up. "What's up? Something wrong?" He handed me his phone showing my Instagram profile. There, in the comments of my latest post, were a bunch of messages, some supportive, some flirty, nothing out of the ordinary. Okay. I was confused. It's my mom, Mark sighed. She's been going through your posts, making a big deal out of every single comment from a guy. She's spinning it like you're, I don't know, inviting attention. Anger surged through me. You've got to be kidding me. It's Instagram. People comment. That's how it works. Yeah, I know, but she's convinced there's more to it. She's telling everyone who'll listen that you're not faithful. It's ridiculous. I snatched the phone from him, scrolling through the comments. Nothing was out of line, yet Linda had twisted it into something sordid. So what am I supposed to do? Police who comments on my posts now? No, of course not. But maybe we could limit who can comment, just until this blows over. Mark's suggestion, though well-meaning, was infuriating. So I have to censor my account because your mom has a twisted view of me? Hell no, that's not happening. The Instagram saga dragged on, with Linda turning every harmless interaction into a scandal. Then came the Alex situation. Bless his heart, he started giving me rides home from work, since his office was just a block from the gym. It was innocent, convenient, but not to Linda's eyes. At a family dinner, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Linda, with her knack for innuendo, started in. Nice of Alex to play chauffeur, isn't it? She said, her voice dripping with implication. Seems like he's always there when Mark isn't. Mark's jaw tensed, and I saw Alex stiffen. Mom, what are you implying? Mark's voice had that warning edge. But Linda was on a roll. Oh, nothing. Just making conversation. She feigned innocence, her eyes darting between me and Alex. Stop it, Mom, you're out of line, Alex snapped, clearly at his limit. The argument escalated from there, with Mark caught in the middle, torn between his brother and his mother's accusations. The drive home was silent, the weight of it all pressing down on us. I couldn't believe Linda would stoop so low, using Alex's kindness as a weapon against me. The whole mess with Linda finally reached a boiling point. After she accused me of infidelity because Alex gave me a few rides home, I snapped. Your mom's not welcome in our house anymore, I told Mark. She's crossed too many lines. Linda went ballistic, but I was past caring. Then came the real kicker. I found out I was pregnant. Joy quickly turned to chaos as Linda, upon hearing the news, questioned the baby's paternity. Mark, influenced by his mother's poison, started to doubt me. I could see it in his eyes, the suspicion and distrust. Our once solid bond was fractured. One night, after overhearing another one of their phone calls, I confronted him. So you think I'm cheating on you? Mark looked torn. I don't know what to think anymore, Erica. You're going to take her word over mine? He didn't answer. His silence was deafening. Things between us grew colder. The joy of our upcoming baby was overshadowed by doubt. When our son was born, with his fair hair and bright blue eyes, the opposite of Mark's dark features, it only fueled Linda's accusations. I even showed them my childhood photos, proving that those were my genes. Look, I said, pointing to a picture of myself as a child, blonde and blue-eyed. It's genetics, Linda. But she remained unconvinced. Convenient, isn't it? The tension finally exploded at our son's first birthday party. Linda, in front of everyone, demanded a DNA test to prove the baby's paternity. Are you out of your mind, Linda? I shouted, humiliated. But Mark, swayed by his mother's doubts, agreed. We're doing it, he said coldly, or we're done. You're choosing your mom over me? Over your son? He didn't flinch. There's too much doubt. The test ends it. His words cut deep. With a shaking heart, I packed my things and left for my mom. Word of the accusations spread like wildfire. Humiliated and desperate, I agreed to the test. At the clinic, the tension was thick. Mark was there, burdened with doubt, and to my surprise, so was Alex. Why is he here? I asked, my voice sharp. Mark avoided my gaze. There's been talk. My blood boiled. You think I'd with your brother? The specialist explained the procedure, highlighting the complications of determining paternity when potential fathers are siblings. We all gave our samples, lost in our own thoughts. The waiting was agonizing. Finally, the day arrived. In Linda's living room, with my son clinging to my hand, She dramatically opened the envelope. Her face fell. "The father is Mark," she announced, her voice flat. Mark, visibly relieved, turned to me with a smug grin. "Well, there you have it, no harm done, right? You can come back home now." Fury surged through me. "Come back? After all this? You must be joking." I pulled out the divorce papers. The room fell silent. "What's this?" Mark stammered, his face paling. "And here's why," I said, revealing the photos taken by the private detective I'd hired, showcasing Mark's infidelity. Mark crumbled, babbling apologies. Linda tried to intervene, but I shut her down. "Your son's a cheat, and you're no better," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I'm not just walking away, Mark. I'll be demanding alimony and compensation." Mark looked to his mother for support, but she had none to offer. That's when Alex, who had been silent until now, exploded. "Enough!" he shouted. "I'm done with both of you. After everything you put her through, I'm out." He left, cutting ties with his family. Mark was left to face the consequences of his actions, and the chasm between him and his mother grew wider. Life, after the dust settled, was different. My blog became a source of strength and connection as I shared my story of resilience. One day, months later, Linda called. "Erica, could I see him? My grandson?" The audacity of her request after everything she'd done was staggering. "You've got some nerve, Linda," I said coldly. "It's too late for sorry." "But please," she begged, "I just want to make things right." "You should have thought of that before," I said, and hung up. It was a harsh but necessary ending. Looking at my son, I knew we were going to be okay. We had each other, and a future free from the poison of suspicion and lies.